Hey guys, welcome back to a JavaScript series. In this video, we're going to talk about debugging in JavaScript. Now, honestly, my plan was to actually get the video for let versus where, the difference between them. That's what my plan was. But then I realized that if I actually talk about debugging first, then it would be helpful for you to understand about that. Okay, you would understand about let versus where in a better way. So that's why I am first of all continuing with debugging in this video. So let's get started and let's understand about debugging. Now, for understanding about debugging, I would actually take two examples, loops example and a functions example. Okay, these are two examples I will show you. And we are going to see debugging in two runtime environments. I'm going to talk about browser runtime environment, like how you can debug there, and I'm going to show you how you can debug in server runtime environment. Now, obviously, for server runtime environment, our server would be Node.js, and we are going to use VS Code for debugging in server runtime environment. Although you can use the VS Code for browser runtime environment as well, which I'm going to show you later on. But the thing is that what that means is that if you're not using VS Code, then you would be you would have to actually switch to VS Code for understanding this in VS Code. Otherwise, you have to find the instructions for your code editor online. You can just find about that on the internet, and you can just debug through that. But in this video, we're just going to focus on VS Code part. So yeah, let's get started and let's understand why debugging is important, and then we can start with debugging the things. So let's open loops example over here, and you can see one basic function that I've written over here. The function actually prints number up to n. So whatever number you pass over here, it would print up to that. So if I actually execute it by saying up to 10, then what you will expect it to return is 1 to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? That's what you expect it to return. So let's go and run this. Now, when I actually let me first of all open JavaScript file, and then here I can run it. So when I run this, you can see that it's not what you expected. It's basically 1 to 9, not 1 to 10. So why this is happening? See, this is happening because there's a logical bug. And that is where you need to actually understand. Sometimes there is a syntax error and sometimes there is a logical error. Now, when there's a syntax error, let's say I just called the function incorrectly, then I see the bug. The bug is print number up to n, right? I have called this function, which is not defined. I had to call print numbers up to n instead. So you can see that it's basically like if you have a syntax error, then it's easier to understand that, right? You can easily go and fix that. But in this case, you had a logical error, which means your program is gonna work, but you're still not going to see the output that you want. It would show you unexpected results. And that is where debugging helps. Okay. Now, the most popular way of debugging in JavaScript is console log. Now, that's basically something that developers usually do, including me. I also use console log a lot for debugging. So basically what we do is that we try to see the state of the program using the console log thing. So what I can do over here, if I want to debug this, I can just go and say, okay, the value of I over here, what is the value of I over here? Although the value of I is over here is being printed, but let's imagine the value was not being printed, it was just being used. So you have to print the value of I to actually understand the issue. Okay. So I just check the value of I, right? And I try to find out what's the value of I. The value of I was, the last value of I was 9. So let's imagine that we started from 8. So when we started from 8, 8 is less than 10. That is correct statement because it is actually less than 10. So if we just print that I, then it incremented the value of I. The I value now became 9. Now when it's 9, 9 is less than 10, which means this is again true. So it just went ahead and printed that as well. Then the value became 10. Now the thing comes, 10 is less than 10. That's false. And because that is false, it didn't print I over here. And so hopefully you got the solution over here. What's the solution? The solution is to either go and make this I less than n plus 1, or you can just say less than equal to n. In both cases, it would start working fine. So you can see that's how we usually debug using console log. And That's all fine. Sometimes people say that you should not debug with console logs, it's bad and stuff. But what I believe is that debugging through console log is also good. For example, in this case, it was actually not needed for me to actually go and open debugger because the program was so simple that you can just understand from, even like by just looking, you can understand it. Forget about console log. So if it's little bit complex, then you can use console log and there's nothing wrong about it. It's actually more efficient way because you would have to set up debugger. All these things would take more time than you would actually get the issue in a faster way with console log. But every time it won't work, as I said. Sometimes the program is so complex that you have to use console log. You have to use debugger. So, and that is where debugger helps. Basically, debugger will allow you to tell something called a breakpoint. What is a breakpoint? Breakpoint is basically a place where debugger would stop the program from executing. Okay. And so what you can do from there is that you can understand the state of your program at that particular point where it stopped. And from that, you can actually get the idea of what is actually happening. And so here, let's actually go and copy this from here and paste it over here. Okay. Loops example. Let's paste it over here. So let's try to use debugger over here and let's try to understand from that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mark a debug point over here. I'm going to mark a debug point over here, which means that it would stop at this point and it would also stop at this point. Okay. Now, once that is done, you can just go to this run and debug. You would find that in your VS Code. You click on that and then you go and say run and debug. Now, the first time you do this, you would be asked the debug environment you want to use. In my case, I already selected that. You would like, I think you would get something like this. Yeah, you would get something like this basically. Okay, when you click on run and debug, the first time you would get something like this, where you have to select the debugger. In my case, I would just select Node.js over here, and that would open. Actually, it won't open launch.json. Don't worry about that. I should remove this. Let me remove this VS Code folder. I mean, you just see the select box and would start the debugger. That's what is going to happen here. So don't worry about that. Anyways, let's go and click on run and debug. Once you click on that, you can see the debugger has started. Okay. Now here, you can see some things over here. The first thing that you can see over here is a toolbar. It has a lot of buttons. The important button for us is this button, which basically means continue to the next step. We have this restart button and we have this stop button. Okay. So restart would just basically restart this, stop would stop this debugger, and continue would actually move to the next breakpoint. Okay. That's the use of it. So if I continue here, then it would move to this line and stop over here. On the left hand side, you can see the variables. So you can see all the variables here that are available. Okay. And so that's how you actually inspect the program at that point, right? That's how you inspect it. And here you can see the call stack. Now call stack, what that does is that it just tells the function that has executed. So I just now executed print numbers up to n. Inside that, I might execute another function, right? So for example, actually, let me do that in front of you. So if I say print number up to n, so basically I'm just executing the same function inside that function. So maybe I can just pass the n again here and save this and run and debug again. Actually, I should do this. Okay. So here you can see when I do this, it stops at this breakpoint and you can see print numbers up to n. That was the function that was running, which is basically this one, right? When I click continue, it then adds another print number up to n instance, which basically means now that this basically this function was being executed and then this function again got executed on top of that. Okay, just to make it more clear, I can like even go and add another function over here, right? Just to make it more clear. Um, and then we have const b. So basically this would call a, okay, and no need to pass n over here, and this would call b, and this would just say hello from b. Okay, so let's go and mark these breakpoints here and let's try to run and debug again. So understand the thing, it would start from this place over here. Okay, So you can see it started from here. And see, now it's gonna call A. Right now you can see print numbers up to n is in the call stack. Now you would see that A would be added into call stack because A is called. So when I click on continue, you can see the A got added over here, right? Don't see this lecture 14. This is just the folder. So yeah, don't worry about that. It's basically the A that got added into call stack. When I click continue again, you can see B got added on top of A. So what that means is that when I called A, at that time, print numbers up to n is not yet finished. It's waiting for A to finish, and that's why A got added on the call stack above print numbers up to n. Then B got added above A, and now when I click continue, the B would finish. And so I would come back to A. Okay. And obviously A does nothing, A doesn't have anything, so it would just, uh come back directly to print numbers up to n, and you can see B, A all are gone from the call stack. I'm going to explain about call stack in detail later on. This video is not aimed at that. I'll just explain this so that you can understand about debugging. But hopefully you got some idea of call stack. It means that functions on top of another function on top of another, basically like a group of functions that are currently being executed one by one, right? That's how you can understand it for now. We're gonna understand about it in detail later on. Anyways, so now you can see, let me actually stop the debugger and remove all this code that is not needed. I just added this for explaining things, but it's not needed actually. Let me remove these breakpoints and let me remove this as well. Okay. Wait, what is happening? Okay, yeah, I need to remove this and yeah, that's it. Now I'm just going to run and debug again. Now here, what I'm going to do, see the thing is that there's a problem in VSCode. I can't mark these things uh, like separately, right? Until unless I start the debugger. I really tried to look at it a lot, but I didn't found a solution for this. So what I just do is that I just say run and debug and then mark these breakpoints. So now you can see a dot there. You just click on that. So what that means is that you're going to stop the program at these points as well, because that's important to understand, right? Let's restart the debugger after this and let's do this now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go and continue. So right now you can see there's no variable I here. Let's click on continue and you can see then the I appears over here. So I got created after this. Now, next you know that condition is checked. So we check the condition. Condition is true because I is 1, n is 10. 1 is less than 10, so it just went ahead. Now you can see over here that it would just print the value of I. Now where you would get the value of I, you would when you start the debugger, you would see debug console over here, and that's where the I value would be printed. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this continue, and you can see I get the value of 1 over here, right? And like that, when I continue, now I say 1, sorry, 2, because I plus plus got executed. So 1 plus plus, that makes it 2. Now 2 is less than 10. That's correct. So it would just, do this. It would print this. And then you can see it came back to this. Now the value I currently is 2. So after I plus plus, it would become 3. Okay. You can see this, house like thing, right? That basically tells the current position of the debugger. And so this would make it 3, and then it would come over here. So you can see it became 3. 3 is less than n. Yes, it is. And then it's just going to go and say print 3 basically, as you can see. Right? Now, when I press this again, you can see now it became 4. Now, I can do one thing here. Now, obviously, this I less than n would be checked by the debugger when I click on continue. But in the debug console, I can do this. I can write JavaScript over here. So for example, I can just say console log hello. So things like this I can do over here, right? You can see I can easily do that, right? I can say I over here, that works. I can say n over here, that works. I can get the values properly inside the debug console. So here you can actually uh, access the state using like commands, JavaScript commands, right? So maybe I want to actually know if I is actually less than n, because if I click continue, that would tell me, but I actually want to see before it moves ahead. So I less than n, is that true? I less than n. I just press enter and you see I get true, which basically means the loop is gonna go ahead. When I click on that and then click on that, so 4 get printed. I'm just gonna go up to 9 and then I'm gonna come back here. So 5, 6, and 7, 8, and then finally we would get the 9 over here, right? So finally 9 is there. Now you can see it came to this I plus plus. So I press continue here and it goes to this 10, right? Now this is very important to understand. You got to this. Now see, this is 10 and n is also 10. Now if I say I less than n, what is that? That is false, which means it's gonna stop at this point. And it would actually happen if I click continue, the debugger is ended now and I'm done with the program, right? So that's how you realize the issue that you did. The issue was that I less than n was being used over here. If you like, actually, let me just start it again and let's do it again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Now, in this case, if I say I less than n, then obviously that's printing false. But if I would have done I less than equal to n, that would have printed true. Or if I would have done I less than n plus 1, that would also have printed true. So I got the solution as well here, that I can just use this instead of that. Okay, I paste this, I save this, and then I just continue. And you can see that basically that's how you can just go and like the debugger stops here. Now if you actually try to run this code again, like maybe debug this again, you just do this, then it would go and print up to 10 now. Okay, so yeah, that's how you can just go and use VS Code debugger to debug the things. Okay, that's one of the example I told you. Now I'm going to show you the example for functions. Okay, now that's going to be interesting example. I actually took this example to show you about anonymous functions. Okay, so I'm just going to mark although this is not the good thing, like you should only mark breakpoints where actually they are needed, but I'm just going to mark the whole uh, all the lines as a breakpoint. Okay, now let's go and run this debugger over here. And once I run this, I am asked for selecting debugger. So I'm just going to select Node.js over here. And you can see it starts debugger. Now here, you can see that we have some things over here. Okay. Now let's do one thing. Let's go and just, do this. So you can see a function called E is created here. Okay. You can see this, right? Now, let's go and continue here. Now, you can see we are going to call E, okay? And we're going to pass an anonymous function to this E, okay? So when I click on continue here, you can see I get into this E in the call stack. As you can see in the call stack, I'm currently in the E function, okay? And you can see there's F over here, which is assigned an anonymous function. How I know it's assigned an anonymous function? Because f is existing in the memory, but the function that is linked with it doesn't have a name. If you see, name is empty, which means there's no name to this. And you can see over here as well, this is basically another function that is being assigned, which with no name, right? Now, if I continue here, that's going to execute this line over here, right? So when I click on this, now notice on the call stack, it's very important to notice on the call stack right now. Okay. Now I click on this continue button and you can see we reach to this function and notice the name over here. That's the important thing. The name over here is anonymous, which means you are actually inside an anonymous function. I just want to prove that this is actually an anonymous function. And as you can see, you are inside an anonymous function. And now you can go and continue over here, right? So when you continue, the F would be console logged in the debug, okay, which we don't care about. I'm just, the main thing is to actually show you the anonymous thing. And now you would get out of this anonymous function call stack and you would reach the E1. So you can see you reach the E function, okay. So you can see that anonymous function got um, out of this, right? Because the function ended. Now you are inside E, and you are on the end of the E. So when you press continue, you would also get out of E, okay? And now you are in the global scope again, okay? Now that's done. Now let's do this. So the next thing we're just going to call E over here and pass it the function G, which is not an anonymous function as I already told you, right? So I'm just gonna do this. So you can see here that we got f over here, which is assigned a function called g. You can clearly see the name over here, and you can clearly see the name over here as well. So this function is not an anonymous function. This has a name, right? Although it's passed as a value, I'm just telling you that it's not a actual uh actual like anonymous function, right? And by the way, if I click continue here in the call stack as well, you would see the same. You would see G over here, global.g. That's something that pushed into the call stack. Okay. And now the console log G happens, and it reached the end of this G function. We press continue again, G got out of the call stack, and then we reached the end of the E function, then E got out of the call stack, and the program ended. So I hope this program actually made you realize about anonymous function and also told you how you can actually debug these things. Okay. So let me go and remove all these breakpoints. Now let's see how you can debug a program using VS Code, but in browser runtime environment, right? So I have this index.html file over here. What I'm gonna do is that I'm just gonna go and attach the script file for loops example. Okay. So I'm just gonna attach this file over here. And then I'm just going to say src, and then that would be loops example.js. Okay, so this file is now linked with this HTML file. Okay, so what I can do now is actually I can just go and say that I can mark some debug points over here. So this one and this one. Okay, now I'm just going to go and run this index.html in a debug. Okay, so I click on this debug thing over here and I click on run and debug. When I click on that, it launches a Chrome window. Okay, so I think this is the Chrome window that got launched. Okay, so maybe I can just go and keep this side by side. Let's do that. Yeah. Okay, let's just. I don't know why this is just going to another screen. Um, let's just go and do this. And yeah, I think now I can do this. Okay, cool. So you can see over here that the program is currently stopped. You can see like the browser tab is just, keep on loading, loading, loading. It's not stopping, it's just keep on loading, right? So that's the first thing you can see. The page has rendered, like I can see debugging in JavaScript that has rendered, right? This thing has rendered, but the thing is still loading. Now why this is loading? This is loading because the debugger is attached over here and the JavaScript program is right now paused, right? So this whole thing is paused, and you can see you can't even select it, right? You can't even select the text because the JavaScript is stopped over there, and there's just one single thread for JavaScript, and that's why the whole tab is currently blocked. Okay. Anyways, let's go and understand about debugging with this. So what you can do here, basically the program is running in browser runtime environment, but you are debugging that program in the node runtime environment. And that is what I actually meant by debugging a program, debugging in VS Code for browser runtime environment. I'm going to mark all these things over here as the debug points, and I'm going to restart this. Okay. Now I restarted this. By the way, I can come here and also I can open the inspect element if I can actually open this. Yeah. So when I open the inspect element, you can see even in the inspect element, it's basically opens the debugger. But anyways, let's go to the console tab. And now I'm just going to do one thing. I'm just going to open the console over here. Debug console is over here, right? Now I'm just going to go and click on continue. When I click on continue, actually, let's restart it. Yeah, better. Now I restarted this debugger. Now let's click on console here again. And now let's click on continue. When I click on continue, you can see that it basically comes to this thing. Okay. So I is less than equal to n. So 1 is less than equal to n is true. So it comes to console log. You can see over here as well. So you can see browser debugger is also reflecting what is reflected in the VS Code debugger. And if you see the console, now if I click on this continue button and the console, you can see the one would be printed, and also in the VS Code console also it is printed. So you might ask why we actually need VS Code for debugging this. If you like VS Code debugger, you can just use it and you can close this thing, right? And you can just focus on debugging through the VS Code debugger, right? And that's the advantage of using VS Code debugger if you actually want to just use that instead of using the browser debugger. But anyways, you can just do that and you can see it just basically runs the loop completely. And once the loop would end, the browser tab would completely load and it is gone. So you can see now you can even select the text because um, JavaScript has now ended and the page is free from anything else. So yeah, that's how you can see we can debug in the browser runtime environment through our VS Code. Okay. Now let's see how you can actually debug in browser runtime environment directly using the browser console. Okay. For that, I'm just gonna close this. I'm gonna close this as well. And I'm just gonna close this as well. I'm gonna close this window as well. I don't need this. Okay. Now once that is done, let's go and yeah, here I have this loops example attached over here. So I can just go to the browser here. Okay, I'm gonna actually start the live server, and that would take me there. Okay, actually it took me there, but it took me on the other window, other screen. Let's grab it over here. Okay, there we go. So I can see the debugging in JavaScript. This thing appears over here. Let's open the inspect element. You can open that by Command Shift I on Mac or Control Shift I think on Windows as well. Anyways, let's go here and click on sources. Now here you can see loops example.js. Click on that, and then you have to mark debug points over here, just like you did in case of VS Code. So you can just mark debug point over here, and then you can also mark all these things like you did in VS Code, and then you can mark this as well. That's it. Now you can see we have marked all the debug points over here. And now what you have to do that you have to restart the browser. Why you have to restart, not restart the browser, restart the tab, refresh the tab. Why you have to refresh the tab? Because this has already run. So you have to refresh for it to run it again. And then only the debugger would actually catch the debug points and stop at that. So when I run this again, you can see it's paused in debugger and the Chrome tab is again on loading state. And on this side, you can see, just like in VS Code, you can see all these things over here. So now I click on continue. That basically gives I a value of 1. By the way, you can also see the call stack over here that I'm on print numbers up to n, right? That's the function I'm on. Let's go and run this again. And you can see now I got to this. Okay. So now let's click on continue over here, and that will just print 1 in the console. Then we go against sources. Now here, the I would get incremented and you would notice the value over here. So I would get incremented to true. You can see it all works fine. Okay. So yeah, that's how you can debug in browser environment. Basically, you can see it's same as it's the same way as you do it in the uh, VS Code, right? So it's almost similar. So I prefer to use the VS Code runtime, VS Code thing. I prefer to use VS Code to debug in browser runtime itself as well. And obviously for Node, I use the VS Code only. So yeah, it's upon your wish. If you want, you can use that, or if you don't want, you can just use uh, the browser runtime environment. Basically, the browser console you can use for debugging the program. Anyways, I'm just gonna go and remove these breakpoints, and I have to restart after removing this breakpoint. So I have to refresh this page over here, so that things goes away. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. And you can see all these good things got printed. Let me close this and come back here. Let me turn off the live server. Okay. So yeah, that's how you can debug it in the browser runtime environment, with browser console basically. So yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you understood about debugging. This is actually very important for understanding about the difference between let versus where. So we're gonna see that in the next video. But hopefully you understood everything over here. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in comment section below. But yeah, that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.